if you're a kids worker, just run with the schedule you're already running, doing the things that you normally do, and we're going to piece this all together over the next few weeks and go from there. So hopefully I can get through this. I've been fighting this for 4 weeks now. This throat congestion, all this crud. That's why I brought 2 things to drink up here. I've got a cough drop in my mouth, so hopefully we're going to get through this morning without me going into some kind of a coughing fit. But I want to talk to us this morning. You see up on the screen, In Between. Now, that's the only slide you're going to see, so guess what? You actually can listen. And there's no note sheets. So you don't have to worry about jotting things down. Now, if you want to take notes this morning, that's fine. But I didn't provide you with anything. But I'll tell you one thing. You know, when you're up front or you're in the back, you notice some things. And what I notice is when Pastor Scott gets that last blank filled in, you know what happens? This goes off. Everybody's, I got to get it in my binder. We got to do all over the room. Everybody's binders clicking together. So you don't have to think about all that this morning, okay? I want to talk to us about something. It's a story that if you've been in the church any length of time, you're going to be very familiar with this story. You're going to know who this guy is. You're going to say, oh, okay, I get what he's talking about. I remember this guy. Donny Osmond played him in that play I saw one time. You know, I want to talk to us about Joseph this morning. And the coat isn't it. I had big plans for this morning. I had all kinds of stuff. And actually, when I get done today, I'm getting in my car and I'm driving to South Carolina for training with the job that I have. So a lot of the things I was thinking about doing, because those who know me know I like to do all kinds of goofy, crazy things. So I just don't have time to get all this together. So you're just going to get it straight up from my heart this morning. How's that? Is that all right? All right. Joseph is one of these guys in Scripture that you look at and you say, this makes no sense. The things that God had him go through really makes no sense. And like I said, you see on the screen, the in-between. I'm going to start at the beginning of his story, and we're going to kind of jump through here. And we're going to look at some things this morning that I hope that by the time I'm done and you leave, we come to an understanding of maybe where we are right now today and what God is doing in our life right now. Okay? So the beginning of Joseph's story takes place in Genesis chapter 37. It says, this is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, who's 17 here? Who wishes they were still 17? All right, anyway. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended his father's flock, and he worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. That's usually not a good place to start. When you're down the line that far, when you're number 12, and you're telling on big brothers, Joseph had some learning to go through. All right, we'll just say it that way. But Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers about it, they hated him even more than ever. Can you imagine dinner? Could you imagine sitting around? There's so much hate. There's so much animosity here of this punk teenage kid that dad gives him everything he wants. Now God's giving him dreams. Who are we? In a culture that the firstborn, they're the ones that get everything. But we have to remember who his dad is. Remember the story about his dad who stole the birthright of his older brother. Think about this. So let's keep going. He says, listen to this dream. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up, and your bundles gathered around and bowed low before mine. I can just see a potato flying across the table. Bam, you know? That's what because that's what would happen in my house, you know? Fork in the hand, you know, it's crazy. His brothers responded, so you think you're going to be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more. This just keeps getting deeper and deeper. This is because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. Listen, I've had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. This time he told the dream to his father as well, and to his brothers, but his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that? He asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come to bow to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams meant. Interesting setup. You ever had a dream? And I don't mean the I showed up at work naked dream. And I don't know how this... Have you ever had a dream? Something that, you know, you're not even really sure where it came from, but it gnaws at you. You can't get away from it. It keeps you up at night. It makes you get out of bed in the morning. And, you know, you ever had a dream? We're going to look at that this morning. And I want to look at 4 phases that a dreamer goes through, because the reality is whether you acknowledge that something in your life that you've wanted, something that you've pursued, and, you know, and it may be a retirement home in Florida. I mean, that's okay. It doesn't have to be this big fancy spiritual type, you know, whatever. But I'm just saying, if there's things that you truly believe God has birthed within you, there's some things you're going to go through in life before you actually see that happen. The first phase is the easy one. That's the dreamer. All right, that's where it starts. We get an idea. We get something that, again, that's birthed in our heart, and dreamers are awesome. You know, I love hanging around dreamers because they just get things going in my brain, and I'm the kind of person, I can hear an idea and I say, oh, let's do boom, 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 and we'll make it happen. That's me. I think I'm rumbling a little bit. So, but you know, and you have that, and that's just me. That's how I think. You know, Pastor Scott, when I wasn't here, he would call me and goes, hey, I'm thinking about doing such and such, and I've done this, this, and this. And I said, well, I wish you hadn't done that and that, because it would have made making it happen much easier. But here's how we can fix it. Here's how you do it. And there's been times he called me. I remember when they were trying to deal with some sound stuff here, and he called me one day, and he goes, okay, we tore it all apart. Now we can't make it work. And I said, he goes, what did we do wrong? I said, you tore it apart. That's what you did wrong. You know? But it's okay. We got it. Obviously, things are working. But the thing is dreamers are great. They come up with ideas. And when you look about it, every important invention and things that we deal with started with the dream. You know, it wasn't that long ago that when I was growing up and the phone rang, you know, I didn't pull out something about this size that has more technology than they used to put a man on the moon and back right now. I had this thing, we were stuck. It hung on the wall. And it had this little cord that curled, and you would try to see how far away you could get it to reach. And if you were lucky, maybe there was a broom closet you could go hide in so you could have privacy. Know what I'm talking about? Yes. And some of you even remember the kind of phones that, you know, somebody could be listening in on the other side that wasn't the person you were talking about, right? And remember, we had to do this. And it was always so frustrating when you goofed up on the last number and you had to start all over again. You know what I'm talking about? But somebody came up with the idea and said, you know what? There's got to be a better way. So we came up with the bag phone. When we went to Cleveland, this is like back in 92, 93, we had a friend whose wife was pregnant, their first child, and he went out and got one of those big bag phones. And we were in an area in Cleveland called Covington, and we were going to go grab something to eat or something like that. And he's carrying this bag with him. I mean, it's huge. It was like a life support system, just in case. And Jim, and he was always so concerned that the battery would die before, just as she called, because it could only stand like 2 hours worth of battery life. Then you had to plug it. And you guys are sitting there. I need a cell phone that I can communicate with Martians and 14 of my friends all at the same time. And if you love me, you give it to me. Or maybe that's just my house. I don't know. But anyway, the things that we've gone through. We get on an airplane and we fly anywhere we want in the world, and we don't realize that it was barely 100 years ago that the most flying we did was that. Somebody had an idea, but see, we can't keep it there. That idea something has to happen with it, which takes us to the next stage, which is the worker. See, dreamers who just dream, they don't really help us out a whole lot. If we're not willing to do some things to get that dream happening, we're kind of stuck. So we have to begin to understand there's work that has to be done. That's part of this in between. Dreamers, we have those dreams, wow, God, if you'd help me win the lottery. Do you imagine how big that tithe check would be? Just think, all those things Pastor Scott once got. I'm telling you, it's the first check I'm writing. And all the missionaries. Just really, God, think about that. That's me. That's my heart. Let's keep going here. Colin Powell said a dream that doesn't become a reality, or he said a dream doesn't become a reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. We have to put ourselves in action if we're going to see something happen. All right? Now, I don't have time to read the entire account of Joseph, but remember those brothers kind of had a little attitude problem towards him? So much so they decided, let's just kill him. Let's just kill him. Get it done with, get it over with, kill him. Fortunately, he had one brother that had a little bit of a conscience that said, no, we're just going to throw him in a well and we'll forget about him. Then they can't say we did it with our own hands. We'll just let nature take its course. Wow, wouldn't that just be the greatest? That's the best brother you got. About that time, they see this caravan coming by. Hey, I got an even better idea. This is pre-eBay. Let's sell him. Great idea. We'll get rid of him. We'll make some cash, and Dad'd never know. So they sell him. They sell him to these people that are heading into Egypt, and they're like, we don't want this guy. So what'd they do? They sold him again. Now remember, he's got a dream. You're going to bow down before me. I will be your ruler. He's being sold as a slave. God, excuse me. Remember that? God's going, yeah, I remember. Just watch. So here's where we pick up the story again. Genesis chapter 39 says, the Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did, as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar. So he soon made Joseph his personal attendant, and he put him in charge of his entire household and everything that he owned. And from the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. See what God's doing? God's putting things in order. God's orchestrating things. I don't know that Joseph realized that. I'm not so sure that Joseph was really aware of everything that was happening. I'm sure there were nights where he still went back to his room and said, how in the world am I supposed to make a difference? How am I supposed to be a ruler if I'm a slave? Keep going. It says, all of his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. And with Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. Wow, what a problem. You know? If that's your biggest struggle, what am I going to eat today? I think your life's in pretty good shape. You know, if that's the only problem you have to worry about. Let's keep going. It says Joseph was very handsome and a well-built young man, like me. And Potiphar's wife, I just got to make sure you're all still awake here. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. Now, no one here has more authority than I do. And he has held nothing back, nothing from me except for you. You're his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. See, even in the midst of this, Joseph was well aware of who was really in control. May not have understood everything, because let's just be real honest, this could have been pretty easy. This could have been pretty easy. Let's keep going. So she kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, and he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. And one day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. And she came and she grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. And Joseph tore himself away, and he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. And when she saw that she was holding his cloak, and he had fled, she called out to her servants, and soon all the men came running. Look, my husband has brought this Hebrew slave. She's going to remind him who he is. You're nothing but a slave. To make a fool of us. And he came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. And when he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, and he left his cloak behind with me. And she kept the cloak with her until her husband came home. Then she told him the story. That Hebrew slave you brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me, she said. But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. And Potiphar was furious. We need to understand, he could have had Joseph killed instantly. He's just a slave. I can get another one. He's nothing. But for some reason, he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. Remember, I said we have 4 phases. We have the dreamer, you have the worker. We've seen Joseph is working. He's doing his thing, and God is blessing what he's doing. But here's a part where some of us find ourselves, and this part is not fun. But we all go through it at some time or other. And that's that time of what we deem as prison. We feel trapped. I can't get out of this. Maybe it comes with injustice, false accusations, and all of these things. But it's there, and it's part of the process. Because here's one of the struggles that a dreamer has. Not everybody's going to like your dream. Not everybody is going to follow your dream, no matter how great it is, even if it's going to benefit them as well. There's a story about some scientists that did an experiment, and if I remember it right, they took 6 monkeys, they put them in a room, and there was a ladder, and they had bananas at the top. And they would go up, they'd get their bananas, they'd come down, they'd eat them. Well, then they decided they're going to try some things, so as the monkeys began to climb up, they'd hit them with a fire hose. After a while, the monkeys wouldn't go up there to get their food. So then they took a monkey out. They took one monkey out, they put a new one in. They put the food up the top of the ladder, and the monkey, hey, there's food. And the other ones began to grab them, pull them down. And after a while, the cycle got to the point they did this so long that eventually nobody even bothered to go up the ladder to try to get food. They didn't even know why. So we encounter people like that all the time. Because, see, your dream becomes a threat to them. Think about that. Their dream becomes a threat to them. Why? Because it exposes their unwillingness to follow their own. It exposes their disobedience. Sometimes it even exposes their sin. See, when we're in this time, this is the make it or break it time. This is the time when the soul searching begins to happen. When we begin to say, God, do I really trust you or not? See, we see a prison that we might be trapped in. But God sees it as the classroom that he uses to prepare us for that final stage. And see, not all of us are smart enough to figure that out early in life, myself included. And so we go through things, and we go through pain, and we go through trials, and we go through struggles, and we see some success, and then we feel like we're back, and we see some, and every time we learn something else. We learn something else. We learn something. Anybody here, are you still learning?
Oh, yes.
If you're not, somebody who's sitting, if you're not learning, raise your, no, don't. I was going to say, the person next to you needs to check your pulse. Because if we're not learning, then we might as well just roll over, okay? We need to always be learning, all right? See, we need to understand that God knows that if our dream doesn't cost us something, then we're not going to put any effort into it. You know, there's a lot of people that rise to fame and success very, very quickly. You know, we watch one on playing basketball for a certain team just up the road here a little bit. Coming out of high school, making more money out of high school than most of us have ever seen in our life. And he just keeps getting more and more and more. And you don't have to like him. I don't care. But man, just instant, boom. Last week, Mom, can I have $5? Here, Mom, here's a new home. You know? 2 weeks, earlier, Mom, I want to go to prom. Can you loan me $20 so I can buy the ticket this week? Here, Mom, here's another home. Oh, anybody else want one? I mean, it just overnight, instant. Poor kid from Akron, Ohio, today, multimillionaire. To play a stupid game. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, let's just be honest about it. Is your life going to change if they win tonight or not? No. I was actually, it's kind of weird. I was in South Carolina at training with the same company when they won the championship. And I'm in the lobby of the hotel, and I'm like, ah! And everybody's like, what's wrong with that guy? I'm from Cleveland, man. I mean, woo, let's go. And they turn on all the TVs in their little bar in the lobby and everything. And they're getting a kick out of me. And I'm with 6 other people who are not from the States. All right, they're from Europe, they're from Africa, they're from India, and they're like going, this dude is crazy. And I said, yeah, well, if this is soccer, you'd be doing the same thing. And they're like, oh, okay, we get it now, So, and I'm there, and they're like, yeah, they're almost there. And all of a sudden, I noticed them do this. And they're filming, not the game, me. And they're videoing me, and they're like, and I hear, and they send them to me, and I'm like, oh, this is embarrassing, Because it was. Because I was stupid. Because when they won, I'm like, yeah! I didn't care. I was in the lobby of a hotel. I didn't care. I'm leaving in a few days, and no one will ever see me again. Well, except for I'm going back to that same hotel tonight. But anyway, you got to want it. And that's what creates, some of it's the very prison that we are in is the one that we have created for ourselves because we just give up. 30 years ago, I had a dream. I didn't want this dream. I was at North Central at the time, Bible College. Now it's North Central University. I don't know, whatever. Paper that I haven't hung on my wall since I got it gets me the same thing. Go down to Starbucks and I put my card in the slot and I get the same cup of coffee as I would have gotten if I didn't have it. But I was there, and I don't really remember what the situation was before. There was probably one of our spiritual life emphasis, and you're at a Bible college, so you got to be spiritual. And I was a media major. I was a mass media major. My intent was I was going to have my own production company, and that was the deal I was willing to make with God. I said, I am not going to pastor. I've watched my dad do it. No. Because working with people is stupid. I understand why you call us sheep, because we're stupid. And sheep are stupid. I get it. God, I'm not doing this. I'll be a mass media major. I will help ministries. I will do all this stuff. I will make them look awesome. I'll make them sound great. But I'm not doing that. And that was the agreement we had. See where that got me. I remember being in that altar that night, and Pastor Scott, he's so spiritual. Amen. He walks up and down the halls and he sees things here. It's awesome. Let me just tell you, I've worked with pastors that you kind of wonder, do you even pray? Because they never seem to ever say something fresh that God has laid on their heart. I'm just telling you that you honestly have no idea what God has blessed this place with in Pastor Scott. His vision, his dreams, what he wants to see God do. I mean, I've worked with some pastors that, they've talked some very great stories. He's doing what he's got to do to make it happen as God enables him. But anyway, I'm in this, and I'm praying, and all of a sudden, in my brain, in my mind, I see this massive group of kids, young people. I mean, just kids, teenagers. It just, And there's this person in the middle going, no, 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 no. What part didn't you hear? No. And the more they said no, that massive group kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And finally, that person raised its head, and it was me. It was 30 years ago, and it still eats at me. And I'm not trying to say I'm just like Joseph, but I want to tell you something. I've had those moments where we've seen some success. Matter of fact, some of you here watched us and you helped me achieve some really cool things for a few years here. I mean, we did some VBSs here that were unbelievable. We're chartering buses to get kids here. You walk in that foyer and you start heading down. Remember the jungle theme we did? In the entire hallway, ceiling to floor, both walls are draped in leaves and vines everywhere. And it was crazy. I forget, 300 kids, I think, by the end of the week. You don't get up, you don't come up with that, but say, hey, I think we got to do a VBS in 2 weeks. See, the one thing, because see, what some of you know about me and some of you don't, I also had the opportunity to work a lot of concerts when I was young. And I mean big concerts, arena kind of stuff. Richfield, the old Richfield Coliseum, I got to work shows there. I've gotten to do all kinds of things, and I've met some pretty famous people in the, when you get right down to it and everything. And what I saw there, and again, I wasn't serving God at this time. So you got to realize when I went to North Central, I had just given my life back to Christ that previous Easter. And I grew up in a Christian home, grew up in a pastor's home, all these things. And I'm dealing with all this, and I'm saying, why can't we do this in the church like this? Why can't we have a youth ministry that every kid in the area wants to be at, because it is so intense, it is so cool, and not just because of all the bells and whistles. I was doing lighting over 20 years ago before anybody did it. I had youth pastor friends that called me Don Hollywood. They meant it as an insult. It didn't bother me at all. But I'll tell you something else I remember. There was a group of us we were together for a meeting, and the conversation kind of turned, is there anybody in Ohio that you want to go see what they're doing in their youth group? Is there anybody who's doing anything in their kids' ministry that you want to go see what they're doing? And we're from all over the state, and you know what? None of us. Nothing. We can name places in different parts of the country. Oh, yeah, man, I went up to Tulsa, Oklahoma. 2,000 teenagers. How'd you like to have multiple youth services on a Wednesday night? That's what they were doing. You know, and that didn't count the urban youth ministry they did on a different day. You know, or we went here, or we've been there, or we've, you know, oh yeah, these places are so awesome. So what are they doing different than we're not? Well, part of it's because they're just doing it. They're putting the things to work, and they don't care what anybody else says about them. And regardless of what your dream is today, until we get over that hump right there, nothing else is going to matter. Because the biggest hindrance that most people have, and the church is probably one of the hardest places to get this through our heads. Because bless God, this is how it's always been. Well, maybe that's part of our problem. I'm sorry. I told Pastor Scott, I said, not much changed with me, so you want me to get up? And he goes, no, I know. You know, I remember singing that hymn, We Shall Not Be Moved. We shall not be moved. See, I proved it. I remember the song. And some of you are going, oh, I remember that song. That wasn't supposed to be a life motto. What that meant was we're going to stay solid in Christ, not that everything else in our life is going, there it is. We're in concrete. We're not moving. And one of the hardest things to deal with is when you have a vision and you have a passion for something and you've been put in a place to lead people forward, and they just go, no, we shall not be moved. Jeremiah 29:11. Oh, yeah. Oh, I know that verse. What? For I know the plans I have for you. They're plans for what? For good. And not for disaster. To give you a future and a hope. Yes. I love that verse. I have that on plaques hanging in my house. I used to wear a t-shirt when everybody wore Christian t-shirts that had that on it. I have a bumper. You hear what I'm saying? Here's the problem. Have you ever read the verses before it? Let's jump up to verse 8 right before this. It says, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, says. Do not let your prophets and fortune tellers who are with you in the land of Babylon trick you. Do not listen to their dreams, because they are telling you lies in my name. I have not sent them, says the Lord. This is the rub. I know the plans I have for you, a future, a hope. Yes, everything's going to be rainbows and Skittles. I can't wait. But you will be in Babylon for 70 years. Ouch. Really? Come on, man. Let's get to the good stuff. It's like when you were a kid and the dessert, you're looking at it going, oh, man. I'm going to put a serious hurt on that. Mom says, you got to eat your Brussels sprouts first. And you're like, oh, come on. Nobody eats Brussels sprouts. And if you say, I love Brussels sprouts, we'll pray for you. But you got to eat it. But you didn't even put cheese or something to kill the taste. Come on, Mom. You got to eat your Brussels sprouts. This is what God's saying. I know where we're going. I know what's on the other end. And this is beyond, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? That's not what. There are things we're going to have to go through. I've seen success in ministry. I've seen things, and I got to be real honest. There's been times I said, man, it's starting to happen. I see it. I see it. Oh, we're going to let you go. Excuse me? Yeah, we have budget cuts. Really? I've had people get in my face, you're ruining my church. What'd I do? I'm just doing my job to the best of my ability. I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to do. I had some ladies come to me in one of my churches. 2 of them, hands on the hip, and not the girl pose that all the girls have to have when they take their selfies. Is there something, I don't know, I missed that somewhere where everybody has to, anyway. I don't have time to go into that. But these ladies came up to me and they just pastored on. We just want you to know, with their hands on their hips, we do not like anything that we see going on in this youth ministry. And we are praying that God fixes it. Fortunately for them, I had just come from something where somebody spoke on that very issue, and they said something, because had they not, what I would have said, yeah, I'd probably still be repenting for that. And I said, well, I understand, because let me tell you, that thought flooded back into my head real fast. I said, I understand, but you need to realize what I have to do. I go, I'm dealing with a generation of kids that there has not been church in their life. I'm dealing with a group of kids, they don't get it, and you have to allow God to do his work. I'm sorry all of these kids don't look like they just came out of the Baptist Bible College with their clean-cut hairs and their ties, and that's what they wanted in their youth group. I said, so all I can do is ask you to do me one favor, and this was it. If I'm wrong, I want you to pray that God changes me. But if you're wrong, you need to be praying that God changes you. It probably wasn't 6 months, and both of those ladies came to me and apologized because they began to see the kids coming to this youth group. They began to see the kids. The adults, they've already had time to go to Dairy Queen and come back and get their kids, and our kids were still in the altar. We were seeing kids in the midst of worship who had no clue what was going on. They didn't get it for, they're coming out of Catholic churches. They're coming out of no churches. They're coming from Messianic churches. They had no clue what was going on. All they knew was there was something so real. And they were coming up and, I need this now. Both of those ladies became 2 of my biggest prayer partners the entire time I was at that church. And they would come to me, is there anything I need? You've got an event coming up. What do you want us to pray for? Are there any kids that are going through some things that we can be praying specifically for that the rest of the world isn't aware of? Why? Because, see, when we stay obedient to the cause, when we stay obedient to what God's laid in our heart, he begins to work these things out. So let's keep going, okay? Sometime later, the story goes on to say, see, I don't know how long Joseph was in that prison. All I know is Scripture tells me sometime later, God began to use him again. He began to interpret some dreams, and now the Pharaohs had this dream, and oh my gosh, what does this mean? And all these guys that I pay big bucks to know that they're clueless. And somebody goes, oh man, I remember this dude down in prison. I remember this guy that's down there in the jail, and he's pretty good at figuring out dreams. So why don't we get him up here? Joseph gets brought up. Pharaoh tells him his dream. Joseph tells him what it means. Remember that dream he had when he was 17 years old? It's beginning to start to play out. I don't know how many years have gone on. I don't think he was 17 and a half. I don't think he was 18. Okay? There's some years. He's learned. He's worked. He's grown. He's been refined. He's been burned. He's come out of it. He's been healed. He's been burned again. He's been healed. He's been refined. He's been sharpened. And all of a sudden, this is what it says. Since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or as wise as you. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. That dream is coming true. That dream is coming true. The worship team wants to come on up. I'm convinced this morning there are people sitting here that you feel like you're stuck. You're stuck. Matter of fact, you may be so stuck you're ready to say, forget it. You may have made that determination quite a while ago, and you've settled for something that's not what God intended for you. And this doesn't mean occupation. I want us to understand this. This is who you are in Him, what He has for you in your life, and what He's already, from the beginning of time, had planned out for you. And you're saying, but it's so hard. You're right. I got to be real honest with you guys. Me standing here this morning is a miracle on a whole lot of different levels, and I'm not going to go into all of it. But I've even had somebody tell me, you're not worthy to be a pastor. Yes, this is recorded, and I really don't care if they hear it. Because you want to know what? They didn't call me. They didn't put this in my heart. He did. Amen. All right? You're right. There have been times, and I'm as human as you are, I forget it. I'm sick and tired of this. I don't know if I'll ever step foot in another church again. Because you know what? I can watch Joel on TV. It's good enough. There's a few others, and that's going to be really hard for me because I don't even have access to TV. If it's not on Netflix, I don't watch it. I'm a tightwad, I'm sorry. But see, there's something that keeps gnawing at me. I can't escape it. Because, see, there is going to come a time in my life where I'm going to stand before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and He's going to look at me, and He's either going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, or He's going to say, why'd you let those people stop you from what I gave you? Why did you listen to them more than you listened to me? Why did you believe their lies, even though you may not? And there have been people in my life that have torn me down so much with good intentions. They thought they were right. Paul thought he was right too. You know? Back when he was Saul. We need to understand that God gives us something, that this is our task, this is our job. And if we're obedient to what God has birthed within us, He's going to take care of everything else. But we have to be obedient to that. When Laura and I were at North Central, we were on kind of internship staff at a church that had, it was huge at one point, several thousand. And in one Sunday, boom, gone. In one Sunday, it went from 2,000 to like 20. But there was a lady in that church by the name of Phyllis. And this church did an after-school thing. They went and picked up these kids. They brought them back. They did a Bible club kind of thing. And Phyllis always brought the snacks. And Phyllis was dying of cancer. I don't remember what kind of cancer she had, but, I mean, she was yellow. You know? She was swollen, you know, all that. I mean, the body is, her desire, her passion wouldn't quit, but her body was saying it's time to be done. And the last time she was able to come to this, she was bringing in boxes. I don't know if they were apples, oranges, but it was fruit boxes. So she's got a bag in this hand, a bag in this, and she's kicking one down the hall. And I hear this noise. I'm like, what in the world? And I go, Phyllis, what are you doing? And I'm taking all this. Oh, it's okay. This is my ministry. Phyllis had one desire besides ministering to those kids, and that was seeing her family come to know Jesus. Her husband didn't serve God. Her 3 or 4 boys didn't serve God. I can't remember now. It's too many years ago. But I can tell you at her funeral, what was spoken about was her faithfulness. Her faithfulness to those kids, her faithfulness to the call, and her faithfulness to consistently keep praying for her kids. And at the end of that funeral, the pastor said, you may be here today, and I know some of you are. I'll never forget it when he said that. You may be here today, and some of you are, and you're going to die, and you're not going to know Jesus, and her dream will not come true. But you have a chance. Phyllis is gone, but you're still here. I watched as her husband, and I remember at least 3 of her sons. They didn't just slip up a hand. They stood. I want Christ. Because finally, they understood what her life was all about. I don't know what your dream is. I can tell you, my dream, I'll be right. And I want to build the best ministry to young people in Northeast Ohio. That's what I want. When I was in Lyndhurst, I had 4 high schools within 2 blocks of my church, and I said my youth group's 8,000 kids, because that's how many went to those 4 schools. I go, they're just not all showing up yet. But get ready. And that same attitude is in me. I'm part-time. I didn't even know there was such a... Because I have to work a full-time job. It's okay, but guess what? The passion's still there. And we're going to reach kids in this community. And we're going to see families turned around because of what God's doing in their children. I've told Pastor Scott this, said, you need to understand it. Go, parents will put up with anything if their kids are happy. I said, even you. I want to pray with you this morning. I wasn't sure how I was going to wrap this up, but I just want to pray encouragement. I want to pray that whatever that is, that's again, and I don't care what it is. If it's something that God's going to honor, it's cool. All right? And if it's not going to honor God, you fight that one out with him. But I think there's some of us here in this room that, man, we're so beat up. We're just beat up. There's something that we want to do. There's something we want to see. It may be a very small group of people that you're supposed to do something. And Joseph went to, his family sold him and then lied to their dad. All we found was the remains of his beautiful coat, Dad. We don't know what happened. The story goes on and talks about how the brothers and dad and the family had to come to get food because of the severe famine. Boy, imagine what that was like afterwards. You told me he was dead. Prison, lied about, false accusations. But God honored the dream because Joseph was faithful. This morning, I want to pray for you. If you say, you know what, I need it rebirthed. It's still there, but boy, it's way back. Life's gotten in the way, and it does. Things have happened, things that we don't expect, things that we can't control happen. It does. But it's still back there. And you say, Pastor Don, I want the dream rebirthed in my heart this morning. If that's you, I'm going to ask you to stand where you're at. Because remember, you can dream, but then you got to start working. This is the work part. It's acknowledging it and saying, okay, I don't care what it is. I'm not going to ask you to tell me what it is, but I do want to pray for you. There's something that God's birthed in me, and I need it to restart. I need it to restart. I also want to invite you this morning, if you're here and you don't know who Jesus is, or maybe you do know who he is and things have happened and you're angry and you're bitter and you're resentful, and because of it, let's just be real honest, you're living in sin because you're hanging on to those things and you're not letting God be who he wants to be in your life. But today that can get broken as well. And you go, oh man, if he makes me stand, then everybody will know. It's all right. It's all good. It's the safest place to be. Because we've all been there one time or the other, or we're still in denial. And, well, you know. But that same Savior, this is the thing I love about him. We fall down, he picks us back up. Amen. It's all good. But if that's you this morning, you're saying, you know what? I've allowed this stuff to become a problem, and I'm not where I need to be. I need this fixed. I know, this one's a tough challenge. But if that's you, I want to encourage you to stand as well. Because we're going to pray that God does some amazing things this morning.